Good morning, and thank you for being here for this very important talk you're going to hear today. I'd like to introduce, if you have any questions, by the way, please put them in chat or in Q&A, just like we have been doing all along here. Today, I'd like to introduce Jess Guy, a really interesting person who knows so much about firearms. It's very interesting to listen to him. He's a retired ATF agent. He spent his career working in ATF, which is really interesting. He's also a retired public defender, a lawyer, of course, former professor in criminal justice at San Jose State University in their program there in criminal justice. And currently he consults on a bunch of legal matters pertaining to firearms. And so he is the go-to guy if you have any questions at all on firearms. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Jess.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I'll apologize for being an attorney. I always have to do that when I start talking about these things. A lot of people seem to have a fear of anybody who's been to law school. Trust me, I make as many mistakes as other people do in court, so that's all right. One of the topics that has always been on my calendar is the issue of the rights of the individual to own firearms and the issue of the responsibility of people who own firearms. They go hand in hand. I always have a problem when somebody starts yelling about, I've got the right to keep and bear arms anywhere I want and carry what I want. That's not very intelligent, and anybody who does own firearms, exercising the right to own them, has a responsibility to do that safely, to do it legally, and to avoid any danger to anybody else. I put together some slides, and hand in hand when you have to deal with firearms or have anything to do with firearms or ammunition. It's always a critical aspect of being safe. I've always felt firearms only have two enemies. One is rust, the other is politicians. Rust you can deal with, a lot of cleaning, a lot of oil, a lot of good times. Politicians, they bring their own rust with them. I'm not sure if you can deal with that other than to go to the voting booth and hopefully get somebody that would be a little more commonsensical than some of the people we look at on a day-to-day basis who are trying to pass anti-firearms laws. I'm going to assume that you're here for a reason. The reason is you care about this issue. If you're paying attention, I'm going to point out two organizations which you should join if you're not already a member. The first organization, obviously, is the National Rifle Association. It's the largest organization in the United States that actually works actively to prevent bad laws related to firearms and to represent the rights of the individual person. The other organization is the California Rifle and Pistol Association. This is an excellent organization to join. They're strictly in California. They have legal teams. They have research facilities. They have newsletters. They have a book that comes out every month. If you're not a member of either one of those, you really should be. And CRPA, I used to be on their board of directors. They have some excellent attorneys. They're usually the lead organization in lawsuits for the protection of individual rights regarding firearms. And CRPA and the NRA also have firearms training programs. They also have seminars. They have all sorts of things that are available to people who are really interested in exercising your right to keep and bear arms. So it's something to keep in mind. Moving on, let's talk about the Constitution for a second. I hear a lot of talk about, my right to keep and bear arms, which is enshrined in the Second Amendment. But you have to realize the Bill of Rights in and of itself and the Second Amendment, neither one of those grants you the right to possess firearms. The Bill of Rights, as it says here, is a document which recognizes that right exists. In other words, the right exists prior to the Bill of Rights or the Second Amendment. It's inalienable. It comes not from the government. It exists. And what the Bill of Rights does is restrain and constrain the government from interfering with that right. A little history about federal law. We always usually start off with that. Federal law, we have three major events. In 1934, they passed what was called the National Firearms Act. That was instituted because of gangster warfare throughout the United States, which was a result of Prohibition. Prohibition created monstrous empires of pretty violent people. Machine guns were available, sawed-off shotguns, sawed-off rifles. These types of things were used by criminal element in their wars. And at one point, the citizenry or the government per se got it in their heads that says, you know, if we pass a law regulating machine guns, silencers, and sawed-off rifles and shotguns, you know, we'll cut down on crime. Well, not really, but that's what they did. You have to understand that the National Firearms Act is a tax law, which means that the guns themselves are not illegal in states where we are allowed to have them. If you pay the federal tax, you're good to go. California says, no, not really. We don't like them, so you can't have them. But that's the way it is. In 1938, the federal government passed the Federal Firearms Act. That encompassed interstate commerce. It dealt with licensing firearms manufacturers, dealers, anything that had to do with making guns and shipping guns across state lines. It was an add-on to the NFA, but it dealt primarily with legitimate, if you will, firearms, rifles, shotguns, and handguns. In the Gun Control Act in 1968, it's kind of interesting, of 38 to 68, we didn't have too many laws from the federal government. But John Kennedy, of course, was assassinated in 1963. Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in 1968, as well as Martin Luther King. And Congress decided they should do something about firearms. So they kind of recodified the NFA and the FFA under the Gun Control Act, and they added in certain categories of people who are not allowed to have firearms or ammunition, primarily convicted felons, people dishonorably discharged from the armed forces, people who are addicted to controlled substances, people who are unlawfully in the U.S. I'm not sure what the terminology is these days. We used to say illegal alien, can't say that. Undocumented alien, undocumented immigrant, asylum seekers. People in the country without legitimate papers are, by law, not allowed to have firearms. Recently, a few years ago, they passed another adjunct to that, which added people who were convicted of a domestic violence crime. This was kind of unusual in that all of the other prohibitions addressed what would normally be a felony. The way that the Lautenberg Amendment, which is what it's called, came about relative to domestic violence was that anybody convicted of a misdemeanor domestic violence crime would be prohibited under federal law from owning a firearm for life. There's been a lot of litigation about that. There's been a lot of discussion, and right now it's still on the books, and we still deal with it on a pretty much a daily basis. It was interesting when the law first got passed. A lot of police officers all of a sudden lost their ability to carry a firearm because some police officers who were working had misdemeanor domestic violence convictions. And Congress decided not to change that. They kept it the way it is. Just something to remember. California law exists, obviously, in grand amount of subsections and sections. But in California, they also have their own rules for legitimate business operation of firearms, licensed firearms dealers, the records they have to keep, the things they have to submit to San Francisco or to Sacramento, and when they can be open, how they can store firearms and ammunition, who has access to firearms and ammunition in the store. There are all sorts of business activity laws that they have to follow. California also has a prohibited persons list, which pretty much parallels federal law. California also regulates the private possession of firearms, where you can, how you can store your firearms, how you can transport your firearms. If you want to sell a firearm, the process and the steps you have to go through in order to do that. And a whole litany of individual controls on the keeping and bearing of firearms. California also has an assault weapons law. This originated, wow, almost 40 years ago, and it identified certain types of firearms which California politicians decided were evil. And they originally had a list of named firearms. And from that list, they said, if you want to buy one of these, you can't. You know, we're going to call it an assault weapon, which makes it illegal. If you already owned one, you would have to register it, and you were okay to have it. You just couldn't sell it. After a while, the politicians realized that the manufacturers were changing the names of these firearms that were designated, and still making the same gun, but calling it something else and getting away with it. So they changed the definition again into characteristics. The pistol grip, the sliding stocks, you know, things along that line, and said, okay, well, these types of firearms we're also going to call assault weapons. At the same time, they came out with what was called a series, which were firearms that kind of looked like the original assault weapons, but were again named differently, and they added these other names onto the list. And this went along for a while, and people who were manufacturing firearms, which would normally be assault weapons, came up with a few workarounds. I don't like the term loophole. Loophole just means that you're smarter than the legislators. They came up with these workarounds to convert or to establish that certain types of semi-automatic firearms didn't fall under that restriction. The legislators in Sacramento said, we don't like the workarounds. We're going to make those illegal too and call them assault weapons. And so the point is, right now in California, we have 4 different definitions of assault weapons, generically speaking. And it's caused, again, a lot of confusion. A lot of people get in trouble. They don't understand what it is. I get calls regularly from attorneys about, my client got arrested. Is this an assault weapon? I even get calls from police departments every now and then. Hey, this guy's got this type of gun. What is it? We don't know if it's an assault weapon or not. So we try and work those issues also. Also under California law, we have the process to buy a firearm. If you want to buy a firearm in California legally, you're going to end up at a gun dealer's. You're going to have to bring papers. You're going to have to show that you are a resident. You're going to have to show that you are of a certain age. You're going to have certain documents filled out, one fingerprint taken, and that's submitted to Sacramento, where they run it through magic computers to look for criminal background check. After 10 days, you can go back to that gun shop and pick up your firearm. As an adjunct to that also, you have to have a firearm safety certificate, something that Jan and SVARW and I have been working on to be able to get those issued to people if they don't have them. A lot of gun shops these days all gun shops are required to issue firearm safety certificates after the person takes a test. Many of them don't want to do it because it takes time. They don't get anything out of it. They're allowed to keep $10 of the $25 fee. And by the time someone does the test and they fill out the paperwork and they send it into Sacramento, the gun shop actually loses money. That's just the nature of the beast. Some gun shops won't even do them unless you buy something in the store. That's illegal, but it's going on. If you buy a firearm from a private party, the same thing has to occur. You have to go into the gun shop. Both of you go in, paperwork's filled out. You go through the same process. and go back 10 days to pick up your firearm. There is a safe handling demonstration that's required for handguns, and the dealer does that at the time of delivery of the firearm. California also has what's known as a large capacity magazine law. They decided that if you have more than a magazine that holds cartridges, if it holds more than 10 rounds, it's evil and it's illegal. If it has 10 rounds in it, it's not evil and it's legal. The concept behind this, the mind thinking behind this is ludicrous. 5 rounds, 7 rounds, 11 rounds. Like some lady once said, what difference does it make? It really doesn't. They make arguments, but they don't hold water. Up until about a year and a half or 2 years ago, it was illegal to possess a large capacity magazine, even though millions had been sold in California. And when the law was passed, people thought, wait a minute, this is not good. There was a lawsuit filed by California Rifle and Pistol Association to get an injunction to preclude enforcement of the possession aspect of the law. The law says you can't manufacture, you can't import, you can't transfer, you can't possess a large capacity magazine. Well, the lawsuit was narrowly held to the possession aspect, and a federal judge actually said, yes, you're right, possession should not be illegal. So he allowed the injunction to take place, and for 1 week in California, people went back to buying large capacity magazines. They estimate somewhere between 3 million and 5 million. That's million. Large capacity magazines were imported into California in that week, and people buying them. A week later, Mr. Becerra, who's the Attorney General, went back to court with a request that the law that allowed the importation and sale be stopped. And the same judge who had issued the injunction said, okay, I will listen to what you have to say. And basically what he did was he disallowed the manufacture, importation, and transfer, but he did say possession is still lawful. Now, the Attorney General appealed that to the Ninth Circuit. A 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit ruled that 2 of the 3 judges said, yeah, possession's okay, but we're going to keep the illegal aspect of importation, manufacture, etc. So people could breathe easier, but then Becerra again appealed to the Ninth Circuit en banc, which they have accepted the appeal, and they're discussing, they're arguing, it's in the court right now. What's going to happen, who knows? If the Ninth Circuit says the law is valid as it stands, you're going to have millions and millions of illegal large capacity magazines in the state of California, which is going to really cause chaos and confusion. It's going to be a disaster. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. Right now, possession of a large capacity magazine is lawful. However, under the penal code, it's a nuisance, a civil matter. And if a district attorney or a police department wants to seize your large capacity magazine as a nuisance, they can do it. I have not seen that happen. I haven't heard of that happening. Most of the DAs that I know, except for 1 or 2, say it's a waste of our time to do this. Let's wait and see what the Ninth Circuit says. So that's large capacity magazines. Moving on. California also has a law that says, generally speaking, you can only buy 1 handgun every 30 days. That means if I go into a gun shop, I see a nice pistol I want to buy, I buy it. I have to wait 30 days to buy a second one. effective the middle of this year, next year, I apologize, either 21 or 22, that same law will apply to semi-automatic center fire rifles, only one every 30 days. There are exceptions if you dig through the law, and if you want to buy a firearm as a private party transfer from your neighbor, the 1 in 30 does not apply. If the firearm is a curio and relic, something that's over 50 years old, the law does not apply. It generally is addressing new firearms. California has what's known as the unsafe handgun roster, which again limits the type of new firearms you can buy. These are the ones that have passed all sorts of so-called safety tests that the manufacturers present and have to pay to have them tested. It's a list of guns that are lawfully allowed to be sold in their new status in California. Doesn't necessarily affect used guns. There are exceptions, of course, primarily for law enforcement. We always thought it was kind of funny that the list of firearms, unsafe handguns that the civilian can't buy, a policeman can buy. So, a policeman can have unsafe handguns and we can't. Put that in your brain and shake it around. I already went through the assault weapon issue, 4 different changes in a number of years, and they're still trying to figure it out. Okay. Pending legislation. There's a couple of these that I think people need to actually work on and think about. One of them, which is kind of interesting, is a potential change in the requirement to be a sheriff of a county. Right now, an elected sheriff has to have peace officer status. They have to meet certain law enforcement training backgrounds. Basically, they come up from the ranks or they get hired from another agency to be a sheriff. One of our wonderful legislators, I think it was Scott Wiener, came up with the idea that, well, why do we have to have law enforcement people be sheriffs? Why not anybody? So there's a proposal right now. Oops, bring that back up. There's a proposal right now that says, these are the requirements I was just talking about. Get back to where it was. That's not it. Let's go back. Which way am I going here? Okay. The bill that's proposed right now basically says, why can't just anybody be sheriff? Why can't we have the mayor of San Jose run for sheriff and get elected? Why can't we have the person in charge of Department of Water run for sheriff and be elected? So what this bill is suggesting is that you don't have to have a law enforcement background or be a peace officer or have gone through any of these training courses. No, anybody who wants to can run for sheriff. I don't know if this is going to fly or not, given the status of the people in Sacramento. They may think it's a good idea to get somebody in charge of the sheriff's department who is maybe a little more open to the dynamics of defunding the police or changing the way law enforcement works. To me, it's a scary proposition. I'd rather change law enforcement people for law enforcement people rather than have a civilian get in there. Another California legislative proposal is Senate Bill 777. This was interesting. If you pay attention to it, it reads really nice. It goes through a whole long justification about discrimination of minorities that has existed and continues to exist pervasive throughout the economic system. It says that certain minorities or all minorities have been discriminated against in businesses, banking, loans, anything that has to do with operation of a legitimate business. They've always had these discriminatory acts committed against them. And this law is going to rectify that, because it's going to give these businesses preferential treatment. They're going to be pushed to the head of the line to get loans and to get grants and to be recognized in certain areas. You can argue the right or wrong of that all day long. That part doesn't really bother me a great deal. But what does is that it excludes from this recognition. In other words, the people that they make a list of, it doesn't matter if they're minority owned or not. It excludes the operation of any private or commercial golf course, country club, massage parlor, sauna or hot tub facility, suntan facility, racetrack. There we go again. Or, and this is where we get really excited, other facility whose principal business is the sale of firearms, a shooting range or gallery. And then they go on, or a business which presents live performances of a prurient sexual nature, or the presentation of any depictions or displays of a prurient sexual nature. And what they've just done is put gun shops in the same category as strip clubs and massage parlors and adult bookstores, which is somewhat disgusting to me. But what's even more hypocritical is that even if these businesses are owned by minorities, they're excluded from the gift. So it's hypocritical. California also has a pending, these are all pending legislative acts, AB 1509. If you read it carefully, this one actually reduces penalties for the criminal use of firearms. At a time when politicians are talking about the evil of firearms and how people are being murdered on the streets and crime is rampant, we're going to reduce the penalties if you use a firearm. Right now, there's 10 years, 20 years, life for someone using a firearm to cause great bodily injury or death. These are enhancements. But what this bill will do is going to reduce those enhancements to 1 year, 2 years, and or 3 years. So I guess murdering somebody with a gun is not going to get you an extra 20 years or 25 to life. It's just going to get you 3 years. It makes absolutely no sense at all. It also, go back to this. It also changes the shooting from a vehicle. You know, drive-by shootings right now, 5 years, 6 years, or 10 years in prison on a drive-by shooting. And now we're reducing it to 1, 2, or 3. It makes no sense. At a time when they're screaming about gun violence, they're going to start reducing the time people are going to prison for using guns in violent crimes. Again, a hypocritical approach to a problem that they're creating themselves. Pending federal legislation, there's been a bunch of things that are floating around and changes from day to day. HR 127, introduced by our friendly Sheila Jackson Lee. I think I mentioned once before, this is a lady that never met a gun that she didn't hate. She's proposing this bill, which will actually create licensing and registration of firearms. Licensing and registration of firearms. It will prohibit the possession of certain ammunition, and I'll get to that in a minute, and large capacity ammunition feeding devices. Federal law, can't have an 11-round magazine if Sheila gets her way. It will also allow the Department of Justice, federal, to establish and maintain a publicly available database of all registered firearms. So you register them and they're all in the big magic computer and they'll track them. It also says that you need a license for the possession of firearms and ammunition, and you can't get that license unless you're 21 years old, undergo a criminal background check, have a psychological evaluation, complete a certified training course, and have an insurance policy. So those are the hoops you're going to have to jump through just to get your license. It also allows ATF, my old outfit, to establish their own separate licensing system for the possession of firearms and ammunition, and a registration system for firearms. And there's your prohibition of ammo. You can't have ammunition that is 50 caliber or greater. They don't really define what they mean by 50 caliber. There's a lot of muzzle loaders and a lot of legitimate 50 caliber rifles, and or the possession of a large capacity ammunition feeding device. Also part of, well, let's move on to another one. Pending federal bills, HR 30. It increases public safety by punishing and deterring firearms trafficking. It doesn't really say how that's going to do it. If you read the law, it just says that we're going to really hurt you if you are engaged in firearms trafficking. And it really doesn't even have a good definition of what trafficking means. HR 121 allows the hiring of 200 more ATF investigators to enforce gun laws. HR 125 requires a 7-day waiting period before a semi-automatic firearm can be picked up or a large capacity magazine may be transferred. But Sheila Jackson Lee will take care of that because she's already going to outlaw the large capacity magazines. 7-day waiting period for semi-automatic firearms, kind of cute. In California, we have a 10-day waiting period. This would not override it. We'd still have 10 days. Silencer, normally to buy a silencer lawfully in the United States, it takes 10 months. I don't know how they're going to work around the 7-day waiting period. Again, nonsensical. HR 130 requires the safe storage of firearms and ammunition and will require the investigation of reports of improper storage of firearms or ammunition. That's where those 200 ATF agents come in. They're going to have to go out and make sure you're storing your guns and ammo safely. And the Attorney General of the United States will be the one that stamps his or her approval on whether or not you're safe and your storage facilities are legitimate. This could create all sorts of problems. There's a pending addition to California law. I didn't bring it up, which deals with safety in the schools. They have to have required safety programs. Well, they added in the safety program about how children should be advised about safe storage of firearms and ammunition, which in and of itself is not a bad thought. However, the implementation of this, you can see leading to, Johnny, does your dad have guns at home? Oh yeah, he's got his hunting rifle in the closet. Oops, improper storage. We have ATF agents that can go out to his house now and make sure that it's either stored properly or Johnny's dad loses his gun. This is somewhat, it's scary and it's ill-advised. It could be better arranged. More federal. Requiring a federal background check on all firearms transfers between private parties. In California, we already do that. In many other states, they don't. If I want to sell my rifle to my neighbor, I do it, and it's lawful in that state. This would put a stop to that. You'd have to go to a gun shop. Hopefully the gun shop would be open. Hopefully the gun shop would be willing to do it. And hopefully they wouldn't charge you $200 to do all the paperwork like they're doing now in California. I like the exception here. It doesn't apply to certain firearms transfers, such as a gift between spouses in good faith. I don't know if the gift between spouses in good faith means your spouse is in good faith with you or the gift is in good faith with you. I have no idea. But this one actually passed the House yesterday. The House of Representatives passed HR 8 yesterday. It'll now go over to the Senate, and God knows what's going to happen over there. HR 1446 changes the federal minimum requirement of a 3-day wait for background checks to 10 days. I didn't have this up, but this one also passed the House yesterday. And what they're saying is that the government has 10 days to do the background check, before you're allowed to pick up your firearm after you buy it. It's convoluted in its thinking, but it did pass the House yesterday, and it's going to go to the Senate. Dianne Feinstein, she will never go away. She's got a new assault weapons bill. It was so new they haven't even assigned a number yet, but it's in the Senate, and she's gone back to where she was, 30, 40 years ago, regulating what they call assault weapons to ensure that the right to keep and bear arms is not unlimited, and for other purposes. They always throw that in. It goes back to what the original assault weapon ban was, and they've thrown in now all 4 of the California restrictions of types and series and extra added attractions. And for the first time in assault weapons history that I'm aware of, this one includes firearms, 22 rimfires. It hasn't happened before. It's not in California, other than in handguns, but that's kind of interesting. All right, it's kind of where I'm going with a lot of this. I put up some resource information. I think this is something that people should pay attention to if they want to do some further studies. California Department of Justice, for all their evil intent, has an excellent website for firearms questions and answers, for firearms regulations and law. I highly recommend you go there. The information on it is accurate, and I've run hot and cold with them over the years. Many of the people I talk to are pretty good government employees. Others I talk to are buttheads. It's kind of depending on who answers the phone when you talk to them. But the website's a good website, and you can spend a lot of time going up and down. And usually a lot of the questions you have are already answered there. Federally, you can go to ATF's homepage. Most of the time, that's more of a propaganda page. Look what we did. Look who we put in jail. Look who got arrested. But there are also a lot of other aspects of that dealing with federal laws, federal regulations, things like that. General resources, one of the best ones for me is CalGuns. It's a website, calguns.net, and also calguns.org. It's a forum, and it's a big one, and it has topics that range from camping, survival, cooking, firearms, legislation, all sorts of things, but it's a good website. Another website you should go to, which keeps current information up, is California Rifle and Pistol Association. They've got a good website which talks about current legislation and programs they have, training programs, things like that, which are always useful. Other resources, of course, the National Rifle Association. You can hit their website for current pending federal legislation and things like that. It's a good website. U.S. Concealed Carry, they deal with a lot of concealed carry weapons permits. They have a nationwide information, which states allow other states to carry firearms. If you have a CCW permit, it's a pretty good website for that type of activity. Gun Owners of America, Second Amendment Foundation. These are, gun-related political movements, and they're pretty good. They get involved in a lot of stuff. Friends of the NRA. This is one of my favorites because they have dinners, NRA dinners, all throughout the states, and it's always fun to go to one of them and hang out with a bunch of like-minded people, eat some good food. You get to win guns if you win a gun. I think Jan won a couple of guns at one of them. But it's a good thing to do. Locally, we have the Golden State Second Amendment Council. They're here in Santa Clara County, and they have meetings every Monday. Right now, they're still on Zoom, but hopefully they'll reopen to in-person meetings. And I always try to go to those. just because, again, they pay a lot of attention to local activities. This just came up this morning when I was jumping through my stuff. I would suggest this might be a good thing on Thursday, March, I put 17th. I think that's the 18th. St. Patrick's Day. It's the day after St. Patrick's Day. I think that's the 18th. I might have miswrote that. Don't quote me. They're having a seminar on pending federal legislation, and it's pretty good. It's going to be an hour program. You can access it through the NRA, their ILA grassroots website, Institute for Legislative Action. Let's double check that 17th. I think that, oops, go back one, Jess. That might be the 18th if somebody will help me out here in a few minutes. In a nutshell, oh, there was one last thing, blank screen, because Jan asked me the other day if I could go down the list of a lot of legislators who are pro-gun, not pro-gun, et cetera, that might be able to deal with. I actually pulled what little hair I have left out trying to find somebody who is honestly pro-gun that you could depend on in California. There are some, but I think given the reality of the situation, that can change politically every day. So I would suggest, if you are interested, check out your local people and go from there. So if that's all I have to say, how do we get back to humans here, kids? Mute.
Back to humans.
Back to humans. Stop participants. Do I hit participants?
Stop sharing.
Stop sharing. I don't see that. Oh, there it is, the red thing. Got it. Hey.
Hey, Jess, we're really proud of you.
Yeah, I didn't pass out once.
No, hey, this
No,
is
it's
great.
great. I like Jim Aaron's comment the best. He says he likes the reducing the penalties for shooting deaths, because if they defund the police, we're going to need to shoot criminals ourselves. So have a reduced penalty.
Yeah, take it to the streets.
Really.
Oh. So anyway, yeah, if anybody has any questions, we'll address them. And if not, you know, you can always send them to Jan, or Jan can send them to me, or we can work something out that way.
Linda Hilton has a question.
Okay.
What do you think of the well-armed women group?
Well-armed women group. Where are they and who are they? I have not heard of them. I think it's a great idea.
She says they meet at Harry's Hofbrau.
Harry's
No
Hofbrau
longer exists.
no longer exists. It has not existed for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not meeting there.
That's
Well,
where Harry's Hofbrau used to be the place where the Golden State Second Amendment Council would meet before they closed down Harry's. But if she wants to work a well-armed women's group, I'm all for it. I'll join.
Well, she says they meet in Gilroy.
Ah,
There was
okay.
another one at Harry's that used to meet.
Okay. All right. Let me make, you know what? I'm gonna make a note of that.
We do have,
Well-armed women.
Okay.
we did have one question that was not addressed.
Uh-huh.
And somebody asked, does your firearm safety certificate expire? Which
Good for 5 years.
Good for 5 years.
5 years.
Now, here's the follow-on question from Dr. John Avery Palmer. If you have a license that is set to expire in the next couple of months, do you have to start all over, or is there a different process to renew your firearm safety certificate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Renewal would probably entail taking the test again. But I can do some, I've just been issuing new ones. I haven't done any renewals. I'm trying to think if I renewed my own, so I should know how to do that. Give me a call. I'll get the answer up, pretty easily. At worst, you just take the test again. At best, you just come in and we just renew it. But I'll double check on that.
Oh, how many gun owners are there in California?
That's interesting. Probably about 20 million, I would guess. That's just off the top of my head. There actually is legislation that exists and some that's pending that UC Davis has a gun violence policy center that was doing research, and for an unknown reason, they were not able to access the Attorney General's information database on who has how many registered gun owners there are. He was playing hardball on that. But, just off the top of my head, there's 33 million people in California, at least 20 million people own guns.
I'd heard 40 million. You
Well,
think there's 20 million?
I can believe that too. That's more people than there are in California, but that's all right. I mean,
depends on how you count them too.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I hear we're going to start counting differently now.
Yeah. How many guns are in California?
Yeah.
Well, Terry's question is, she says, well, she wanted to contact you, but that's not necessary, to take the gun safety class again. Terry,
Yeah.
The gun safety class is available on the SVARW website. It's been recorded, so you can watch that. And then there's also information on our website about how to contact Chris Canis to arrange to take the firearm safety certificate test with Jess. So if you have trouble finding that information, send me an email and I'll direct you to that. And I think, Wendy, there's another question out there.
Well, Bradley Kennedy says that apparently the renewal is the same as the first test. So
Take the test.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay. And then Linda wanted to know, do you have an email for questions, or should they come through Jan, or how do you want to do that?
I'm open to give them my email if that's okay with Jan and all you guys.
Okay. If it's okay with you can give them your email. That's fine.
Well, it's complicated. It's Jess Guy at AOL.com.
Okay.
Jess Guy.
So I don't think we've answered Kathy's question. It was, do you anticipate more restrictions on the availability of ammo? I would say in California.
Ammo is going to be hard to get restriction wise or not. It's still difficult to get. The manufacturers are churning out ammo as fast as they can do it. And, but it's going all throughout the United States. California has its own self-imposed restrictions. I don't see any coming down the pike right now, but it's early in the year. And the only thing I could see possibly, other than what we have right now with the required background check, might be something where they say you can only buy ammo for a gun you own. I think that would be devastating, but somebody's probably thought of it in the politicians, but I don't know if that would pass or not. But to answer the question, flip a coin. Ammo is still going to be hard to get. It's very expensive. And until everything lightens up, which I don't think is going to happen with the current administration in DC, especially, it's just do the best you can.
Bradley Kennedy wants to know if there's a limitation on how much ammo you can hold.
No.
Okay.
If there was, I'd be in trouble.
Okay, Charlotte wants to know, do you have to renew your FCS even if you're not going to buy more guns?
Well, you have to have the firearm safety certificate to buy a firearm.
But do you have to keep it renewed if it's only good for 5 years?
Well, yeah. If you're going to buy a gun, you got to have it active. You got to have it current. If it's expired and you want to go buy a gun, you got to get the FSC.
Well, I guess she's asking if you're happy with the one little gun you have.
Oh.
But you would have to buy ammo. You can't buy ammo, right? Without.
Well, no, you can buy ammunition without an FSC. You just have to have your driver's license. But why would anybody be happy with only one gun?
There is that.
Certainly not Jess.
No, if she's happy with what she's got, she doesn't have to renew it to own it. You don't need it to own a firearm.
As
Okay.
Kathy says, a gun without ammo is just a paperweight.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so Brad is asking this question. Will there be another in-person gun handling session with shooting? Sorry, in-person session with gun handling.
I'm happy to do it. I mean, just schedule something up and get people together, and we can do a safety class here, and then go up to the range and do some shooting. You know, just give me some names.
But
Go
they
ahead, I'm
need to
sorry.
bring their own ammo, right?
Yeah, this time, folks, you're going to have to bring your own ammunition. I've been screaming at gun dealers around here for a long time, and the ones that have ammunition, the prices they're asking are high, but that's the way life is right now. But I'm happy to do it.
Okay, well, we'll
Which is
Work it
very
out.
dangerous.
work it out.
They want to know what range you go to.
Uh,
I don't think it's for open consumption here.
Yeah, the range that I go to is a private range up above Saratoga. It's not Los Altos Rod and Gun Club, which is all the way to the top of the mountain. It's a Santa Clara County Peace Officers Association range. That's a private range, members only, but I am allowed to take guests, and that's what I do when I take people up there. It's limited to handguns only, no rifles or shotguns. But usually when we go up there, as you guys know, we have a pretty good time. You know, I just have to make reservations, that's all.
So,
Now, Rana wants to know how you buy ammo for the correct gun. So I think she needs to come to the in-person class, it sounds like.
Yeah, yes, really. Yeah, you got to know what firearm you've got, and then you got to know what ammo to put in it. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well-
I think
well, Brad is asking, does California have a maximum quantity limitation for, does he talk about ammo? Maximum quantity limitation for individuals? Is that guns? You can have as many guns as you can buy, right?
I hope so. Yeah, you can have as many firearms as you want, and you can have as much ammo as you want. Modern smokeless ammunition, absent a local fire department restriction, of which I'm not aware, you can have as many rounds as you want. When you get into the muzzle loaders, black powder containers and things like that, there are restrictions on the amount you can have at your house. But black powder shooters know that, and you know, it's not, I think it's 5 pounds, which is a lot of black powder.
Or Linda Hilson wants to know, where do you suggest buying ammo?
Any gun shop that's open that has ammunition. There's, you know, I know the gun shops around here. If you go down to Cabela's or Bass Pro and you have to make an appointment and run through a lot of hoops, but I think they got ammo in there. Sportsman's Supply on Camden and San Jose, Bullseye Bishop on Meridian, Eddie Shooting Sports in Mountain View, Bay Area Gun Vault in Mountain View, U.S. Firearms in Sunnyvale. There are quite a few gun shops. Big Five, if you can get into a Big Five, sometimes still has ammo around. You just kind of have to start hitting the websites to see who's got ammo and guns.
There's a question out there about, actually, the Reverend wants to know, do you need a gun safety certificate to sell a gun?
No, but when you're transferring a firearm to someone, if you're making a sale, you go to the gun dealer, you show your identification, they show their ID and their firearm safety certificate. The dealer might ask the seller, do you have a firearm safety certificate? If you don't have one, they may not do the transfer because the buyer may not qualify. There might be something that says the buyer can't pick up the gun. In that case, the dealer has to return the gun to the seller. They can't do that unless the seller has an FSC. So that's the situation. I've seen that happen at Bass Pro. I've seen that happen. So, you know, what, 25 bucks, take the test, get the FSC, and you're covered. It's a no-brainer.
Oh, okay. I think Stephanie has a really interesting question here. Is there a way you can order ammo online and ship it to a gun shop?
Yes. Yes. All you got to do is find your wholesaler, find whoever you want to buy the firearms from, have a gun shop who's a quote ammunition vendor. That's the magic word. And they all are. And it will be shipped there. And of course, you're going to pay for shipping. You're going to pay a handling fee. And, but yes, it can be done.
Okay, I think here's Rana's question again.
She find it. Now she wants to know, like, if we're going to use your guns, what ammo do we bring?
It depends on what guns of mine you're going to use. That's something we'd have to talk about individually.
Okay.
I would just suggest if you're going to show up, bring 22 caliber, 22 rimfire, bring 9mm, and if you can find it, get some 38 special. So 22, 9mm, and 38 special.
I have my own question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have to be a U.S. citizen to buy a gun in the U.S.?
No.
So we
Nope.
let anybody.
No, we don't let it. No, we don't let
Chinese
anybody.
communist, illegal aliens, they can all buy guns, huh?
Well, yeah, if they go out to Safeway parking lot and find a guy with his trunk open, he probably can. No, actually, people who are not U.S. citizens who are legitimately here, like green card or people with visas and things like that, there are certain requirements they go through, but they can legitimately buy a firearm in the United States.
Okay, Bradley Kennedy wants to know, he says that there's a California approved list for new gun purchases. Is there such a thing for used gun sales?
No, because used firearms, if they're already owned in California, don't have to meet the roster. If I have a firearm, a handgun that's not on the roster and it's mine, I want to sell it, no problem. There's no roster check. It's a private party transfer.
Is there sales tax on guns?
There's sales tax on consignment guns. There's sales tax on new guns. There's no sales tax on private party transfers. There better not be. It's illegal.
So they haven't gotten like the DMV where they try to charge a tax.
Some gun shops do that, but I think they do it out of error because they don't get the money. It goes to the state. And usually if you see something pop up like sales tax on a private party transfer, no, that's not there. The only payment you make is the dealer record of sale fee, which is right now, I think $47.19.
So I'll put in my own commercial for going to the NRA dinner. Thanks, Jess.
That was fun.
That was interesting. It was fun.
Yeah.
So, and you'll let us know if there's another one in our area again, right?
Yeah, right now, last year, of course, with COVID, the NRA dinners were defunct. I went to 2 all year and had a blast, had a ball, but they were both outside. The one outside was in San Jose up at the POA range, and we froze our butts off. It was bloody cold. But this year, there's one April 24th down in Piscinis, south of Hollister. I'm going to that one. If you want to come, Jan, you're welcome. And
well, there's probably somebody else who wants to.
I got 2 tables. Don't worry, I got plenty of room.
Okay.
And then there's one that's coming up May 8th, but that's up in Auburn or Lincoln.
Okay.
But those are only 2 that I know of close.
I'm sure there's somebody on this call who will send you an email and say, hey, I want to go to the NRA dinner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stephanie wants to know, what's the cutoff date for a gun being legally pre-owned in California? As in, when did it have to be pre-owned before?
Not sure what the question is. Pre-owned.
Stephanie, we need a little more information here.
Yeah.
About what you're asking. Lori, just have to clarify, you do not need to have a safety certificate to purchase ammo. Any specifics?
Well, yeah, nothing specific. Just show your ID. If
Okay.
now let me caveat this. if you have bought a long gun in California since 2014, or if you bought a handgun in California since 1990, you're already in the state system, which means that if you want to buy ammunition, you buy the ammo, you pay an extra $1 to have them do the check, and you're good to go. If you have not bought a handgun in California since 1990, or you haven't bought a long gun in California since 2014, generally they're going to have to do the $19 background check, and that's going to take some time. If you have a firearm that's not registered somewhere in your name, you want to get in the system, you can self-register, and then you do the $1 background check when you buy ammo. So it's kind of a convoluted answer, but if you bought a handgun since 1990 or a long gun since 2014, you're good for the $1 background check.
Okay. Now, Stephanie, we have some clarification here. She wants to know if you have to register an inherited gun, and she was talking about how long ago could you have an unregistered gun and still be okay with it?
Well, it depends on the inheritance time. Generally, if it's something that came down to you many, many, many years ago, there's no real legal requirement to register it. The process of how you got it might trigger a requirement, but that gets pretty specific as to that. And without going into open forum questions and answers on something like that, why don't you just have her send me an email as to where she got the gun, when she got the gun, who she got the gun from, and then I can give her some advice.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no actual requirement. If you own a gun that's never been registered in California, absent something else, there's no requirement you register it. I'm anti-registration. However, I had a long conversation yesterday with another attorney friend of mine, and we both came to the conclusion that, it's probably safer to register the gun. I know that's anathema to a lot of gun rights people, but you're probably safer if you do that. Just a thought.
Safer in case it gets
In
used.
case the cops have to come into your house for some reason, or you're transporting the gun somewhere and somehow something happens.
Or you want to transfer it.
Yeah, well, yeah, transfer is no big deal, but I don't know, it's just a thought. It's just kind of something we were kicking around.
Yeah. Okay, Bradley says, are you saying you need to own a gun on record to enable an ammo purchase in California, even if it's a different caliber?
No, you don't have to own a firearm to buy ammo. You just have to do the $19 special background check to buy ammo. You can go in and buy ammo without ever owning a gun. It just takes longer, and it's a little more onerous, and it's more expensive.
Okay.
Do you understand the question that Reverend's asking?
He says, what about the rifles and HAB, H-A-B? Rifles. I'm not sure what the question is, actually. But you know what? Jess Guy at AOL.com.
Perfect. There you go. We can handle it.
He says, what about rifles and handguns I've obtained from Front Sight about ammo purchases?
Front Sight in California?
Apparently.
Well, if you got them from Front Sight, you went through all of the requirements. They filled out the dealer record of sale. You paid for them. You're in the system already. Go buy your ammo. I don't see an issue there.
Okay.
Is there any more questions?
We really need to go back to in-person meetings here so everyone can just get their questions in. Jess Guy at AOL.com. And with that, I think we're done
With
with
it, I
questions.
think
So.
we're done. It's 11:11.
No, we've
Yeah.
kept him on overtime here.
That's okay. I won't charge you any extra.
Hey, Jess, we really appreciate all that you've done for us, for
Oh, thank you.
SVARW and the gun
Okay.
team. And
You guys are great.
You are
See you on-
wonderful.
See you on the 24th.
Sounds good.
okay,
Okay.
in person.
Thank you for being here.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
bye. I'm out. I'm leaving.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.